business, and I've got one too. You can't mind your business. What's the matter with you?
Welcome to the latest episode of the Brand Shorthand Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Vandergrift, and with me is the best price and positioning strategy, Lorraine Kessler. Thing one. It's Halloween month already. Do you have your Thing One costume ready, or are you considering a different costume this year?
Oh my God, that costume, Mark, when we dressed like Thing One and Thing Two, that was the best Halloween costume ever. So, my granddaughter, who's 8, was just in the Dr. Seuss inspired play. I think it's called Seussical. And
Yeah,
so she loved the characters. So I think you just reminded me. I think I'll dig that out and wear that Halloween. She'll roar.
that'd be great. I think we started a trend because after we did that, I don't know how long ago it was, but it was a long time ago. I started seeing that as a costume in
Yeah.
stores. It's kind of like when you buy a car you don't think anybody else has, you pull it off the lot and everyone else has it. But my Thing Two costume is gathering dust somewhere. I won't even be in town for our annual costume party.
Oh.
So I get a pass on choosing a disguise this year. But speaking of disguises,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to me that Campbell Soup is fast disguising itself behind a lot of brands. Did you hear about their latest acquisition of Rouse sauces? Campbell's also owns Prego,
Mm-hmm.
Pace,
Right.
V8, and SpaghettiOs. And I
Yep.
get all those because they all have something to do with tomato ingredients, right? But they also own Goldfish. My daughter will be happy to learn that one.
That's
She
new.
loves Goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
Pretzel chips, Late July, which is a chip, Cape
Okay.
Cod snacks,
Mm-hmm.
Lance, Swanson, and Snyder's of Hanover.
Oh,
Seems
cool.
like they're stretching their wings a little bit. Any thoughts
Mm.
on that?
Well, I'm actually impressed with their brand portfolio, although they haven't done well in the last quarter in their stock. But they're not alone. They're not the only kind of conglomerate in the food business. Their main competitors, and most people probably have never heard of, Mondel. I think it's Mondelēz International, which owns um, all sorts of things. Like they seem to be specialized in candy, cookies, and salty snacks. So they own like Cadbury, Belvita, those kind of airline cookies, um,
Mhm.
Chips Ahoy, Oreos, Tang, Ritz, and then there's Kraft, right? Kraft Heinz now. That's another kind of mega competitor, like who has a portfolio of very products, like we all know Kraft cheese and Heinz condiments, but they also own, surprisingly, Oscar Mayer, Jell-O, Kool-Aid, Classico, the Italian sauce. They're competing with these. Campbell's is competing with these kind of conglomerates like they are, and so they just buy Rayo's, and I think what's interesting is if you give me a little time maybe to go through a little bit of Rayo's history, because I'm not sure all of our listeners, viewers know that much about
Yeah,
Rayo's, because it seems like they just
yeah.
jumped on the scene in the last, 5 years or so. Yeah,
Mhm.
they've really, really been around a long time. I mean, they got into the retail market around the early 90s.
Mhm.
And a guy named Joe Morano used the recipes of the legendary New York restaurant owned by the Reyes and Pellegrino family, which has been around since 1896 in New York. And that restaurant was very famous. It was the stop for the rich and famous and the celebrity. And so Joe Morano used the recipes from Rayos to create a retail product line in the early 90s. And it's based on kind of Southern Neapolitan cooking, which is Neapolitan is Naples. And Naples
Mhm.
is the home city, supposedly, where pizza originated. Naples, Italy, not Naples, Florida. so, so Sovos, who sold this, is a private equity firm, and they sold Rayos after investing quite a bit in expanding the pasta line and expanding to pastas themselves, and really doing, I think, a nice job. and hiring, I think, a California agency to do some really good advertising for the tune of like 10 million. They sold Rayo's to Campbell's. And when
Hmm.
they owned Rayo's, their objective was always line extension. That was part of the script, right? Because they wanted to capitalize on the super premium category in sauces and pasta, which has gone kind of unused. And there's a good reason, or underdeveloped. There's kind of a good reason for that, right? Because they looked at the space and they said the average sauce sells for like $2.22 a jar,
Hmm.
and Rayo's is about $8 or more. And the
Wow.
profit, the profit difference, Mark, is unreal. Um, those in the promotional or average price range are taking in about 40 cents on profit, where Rayo's per jar is taking in over $2. So
That's huge.
it is huge. So I don't think that Stovos wanted to boil the ocean. I think they wanted to
Hmm.
find a very lucrative niche and kind of own it and expand the line within that niche of the premium buyer. And
Hmm.
they did all this before selling it to Campbell's.
Yeah. Well, you sent me an article about Rayo's branded pizza
Hmm.
showing up in the frozen pizza
Oh yeah,
section. So we kind of have some interesting brand management for Campbell's Soup to figure out here.
right.
But Rayo's moving into DiGiorno's and Red Baron's space. What do you think there?
Well, it's interesting because in the study of Stovos, I found that they had tried to break into the frozen foods category, which I know from my experience having worked with some food companies, that the frozen category is has its own unique kind of competencies that are required. It's not as easy as you might think. You have to have cold storage, so it's different distribution. There's some logistics on how to get the product there. It's the space is pretty tight, so it's hard to get entree. And so, not surprisingly, Sovos wasn't too successful. They said they had a lot of headwinds breaking into this competitive space. So I think that Campbell's strategy with this might just be to create a beachhead, get a foot in the door, test out like with pizza. And again, you know, the they may still hit some headwinds, and some of them might be things like if you think about the company DNA, like we always talk about that.
Hmm.
Campbell's really doesn't have expertise in the frozen category. So
Hmm.
that's going to be a little bit of a difference. I don't recall any of their brands being in the frozen category. From a
Hmm.
competitive perspective, you're right. The category right now is led by specialists like DiGiorno, Red Barons, Totino's. And so we know from our positioning, and this is just kind of a principle, that it's really hard to overtake a specialist. Like if you have the Rayo's
Hmm.
name on a broad extended line that now goes from pasta and sauces and the stock shelf to the frozen case, how are you going to, the brand wise, and I'm just talking brand, the specialist is going to
Hmm.
win the battle of the day in most cases. So I think it depends on what Rayo's wants from this move. If they just want
Hmm.
more additional sales, revenue, profit, I mean, if Campbell's just is looking at this as a good sales thing, and their salespeople can go in and have a broad portfolio to sell, okay. Um, but long term, and this is just a risk. It doesn't mean it's going to come true, but it is a risk. It could be potentially bad for the brand because it does what Jack Trout used to call the seesaw effect.
Hmm.
Heinz used to stand for pickles, and
Pickles.
then
Yeah.
the more ketchup went up, pickles went down. They're number one in ketchup, but they're like nowhere in pickles. So
Hmm.
this kind of happens when brands line extend. So I'm not sure what Campbell's objectives are, but uh, and I don't want to make a forecast, but it I don't think it'll be as easy as I think.
Yeah, I think logistically it'll be tough from a pure brand play. I guess I could understand it. We buy mids and mids only. Um, and for our listeners, that's a more of a regional
Yeah.
player. But their pizza sauce is, in my opinion, even better than their pasta sauces, which are already amazing. If you haven't tried them and you can get mids, get it. But if Rayo's puts its sauce on a pizza, I can believe that because
Mhm.
I guess for my own bias, mids has really good pizza sauce and we use it on all of our pizzas. And
Yeah.
then given their premium position, I would assume the pizza will be pretty good. But DiGiorno's is kind of holds the premium position, but it's expressed as just like delivery, which doesn't necessarily delivery is not premium. It's
Yeah.
just I get delivery at home. So what do you think about Rayo's taking that premium position?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see if they take a super premium position or a premium position that's very close to DiGiorno's, like
Mhm.
negligible. I'm not sure what that price strategy will be, but they'll definitely be in the premium tier, right? Because otherwise they'll undermine the rest of the brand in the other areas.
Right.
So I do expect them to be premium, but to do that, it depends how they play it. I hope they're not lazy or cheap. I hope that they really put advertising behind the frozen
Mhm.
pizza, and that if it were me, I would position them based on the origin of Rayo's and its heritage, the restaurant. That these are historic New York restaurant recipes from the famed Rayo's restaurant brought to you,
Mhm.
kind of thing, and that they're the recipes for the home that you can't get anywhere else. So I would definitely go back to what we call the heritage position and
Mhm.
use that to drive a premium perception, because you can be premium price and not have the perception. And I don't think you can count on people who buy frozen pizza, which in my mind is kind of a convenience product, really
Mhm.
understanding all of the cred that's behind the Rayo's name.
The problem is
Hmm.
frozen pizza in my mind doesn't equate, like I wouldn't go out and get that and say this is the best pizza in my life. So like you said, premium is a hard thing to express.
Hmm.
Heritage might help, but I don't know. We'll see. I think it could work. It's obviously going to be priced higher, and at that point in time, you say, "Gee, is it worth making my own or ordering delivery or something?" But
Right.
there's never shortage of brand news, is there?
Yeah. And I do want to make the point that in the food category, even though I've said go back and claim something to do with the 1896 restaurant and their, and it was Southern Neapolitan type cooking, which is Naples and pizza originated. There's some vein there. Um, while we say to go back to that, you have to make sure that you convey taste. Taste is
Mhm.
kind of table stakes because it is so subjective. So it's not like I would leave taste out. It's like taste the, you know, taste Naples, taste something, or it's
Mhm.
just how you do the commercial where you make the product visually look fantastic and you can taste it with your eyes, in other words.
Well, there's no shortage of brand news, but we need to get to our topic of the day. We're already halfway through our 30 minutes. So, this continues our series on ways to differentiate. And today we're going to cover low price. This is what we would say our least interesting position, but there's more to it than meets the eye. And you've written some of our positions, few blog posts on Southwest
Hmm.
and Walmart. So let our listeners know why this isn't the easiest position to own.
Well, we're really not just talking about a low price, right? Amongst a group of low prices. When you talk about owning a low price position, it's really owning the lowest price. And it's
Mhm.
difficult because you have to be willing to go lower than any competitor at any time that comes in the market. And this isn't just about cutting costs, right? I mean, then you cut
Mhm.
margin and then you cut profit, and pretty soon you're out of business because
Yeah.
a business needs profit. That's the lifeblood. So the only way you can really own lowest price is by making structural differences or changes to the whole operation of the business that is very different than your competitors. That allows you to pass along the same margin, even a greater margin, because your cost structure has been managed. And that's what Southwest did when they did their short routes and they only had one type of aircraft, so they didn't have to train pilots on all different aircraft, and other structural changes. And Walmart, too. I mean, Walmart literally invented kind of computer on-time warehousing and inventory management, and were the first to really apply software to the intelligence of how they ran the business, which cut a lot of waste and cost out of their system. And then they were strong buyers. I mean, I remember in the day, my client, Champion Spark Plug, they didn't have any hand. You either went to Walmart, and this is when they were small. They only were still in C and D markets. But Sam Walton was like, I don't need you. You need me. And he meant it. So it worked.
Yeah, drive down the price or the
Mhm.
cost. Well, let's provide our dictionary definition like we always do. So the rules of play for low price. Price is often the enemy of differentiation. When price becomes the focus of a message or a company's marketing activities, you are beginning to undermine your chances of being perceived as unique. What you are doing is making price the main consideration for picking you over the competition. As Michael Porter says, cutting prices is usually insanity if the competition can go as low as you can. Here is the key. You can start with price if you have a structural advantage that puts you way ahead of the competition. Dell built a super e-commerce site before anyone else. Walmart created the technology and supplier muscle to leverage their position. Southwest changed the rules of play for airline travel by using one kind of airplane. They saved on training and maintenance costs. By not offering advanced seating, they saved on expensive reservation booking systems. By offering no food, they eliminated expense and time. By avoiding expensive hubs and using less expensive, smaller airports, they avoided high gate charges. To offset the cattle car version of air travel they made it fun. So, Lorraine, this position isn't
Ooh.
sexy, but some big brands have lived and died by it. Southwest isn't perceived as low price anymore. Why? Because when I price compare, they're never the low price. And when you
Mhm.
look at their website, they don't even seem to stand for anything.
Yeah.
We might call them a survivor of all the airplane mergers, but that's about all they got. So
Yeah.
if you have a good route option, they might be, your saving grace. Where do they go next?
Honestly, I don't know where they go because they're no longer those lower cost kind of legs and gate charges. They really fly to big markets. And this is exactly what the definition you read points to, right? Is that low cost or lowest cost works for a while, can give you a big headwind, and of course they got caught it, but it's some point in time it catches up with you, and it has caught up with
Mhm.
them. So I really don't know, but it definitely, I think they need to reposition. And I haven't heard any advertising for them or anything that gives me a sense of who they are. I don't even recall now even kind of the slapstick, kind of humor they used to have with their customers, right? So
Yeah.
I think I think they're late to the gate in repositioning, but they need to do it. They need to figure out what they can own uniquely within a very commoditized space that has
Yeah.
become all about price and destination.
Yeah, I can name three just at our little regional airport here: Allegiant,
Yep,
Breeze, and at one point Frontier was here. And
yep,
all three of them had moved in after Southwest was known for low price and undercut them significantly in cost.
right.
So and then Southwest bought AirTran, which is a low cost carrier, and they never matched pricing, and they left our airport around here. And I think it's almost like they've backed into the same kind of company as Delta or American Airlines or United or any of the other survivors of the mergers. And there's really no difference going on there. But one of my favorite studies of a low price position is the insurance industry.
Hmm.
And there's three that our listeners will be really familiar with because they are advertising nonstop. I
Hmm.
actually enjoy all of the commercials, and it's because they're sticking to their position. So Geico, Progressive, and Liberty Mutual all push low price, but they each do it differently.
Hmm.
Geico is 15 minutes, saves you 15% or more. So that equals a position of time plus savings, will quickly save you money. Progressive has the price checker dramatized with flow. You may not always save money, so they're not always low price, but they're challenging to shop them, and they're hoping they'll, find their low price with Progressive. And then finally, Liberty has a low price position focused on only pay for what you need. So customization of your plan. Three brands, same category, all pushing somewhat of a low price, but like you said, only one can be lowest price. And interestingly enough, all with some sort of a mascot. So you have
Hmm.
the gecko, you have Flo and Friends, you have the Limu, Emu, and Doug.
Yeah.
Lorraine, sort this all out for us.
Well, what you're seeing in play is a commoditized market, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's partly to be expected in the sense that all these companies are of a large size and scale. So they should be able to have some sort of price-based position. That's not to say they're all lowest price. I mean, I think the closest is Geico with the save
Mm-hmm.
15%. I think Progressive, as you mentioned, although I haven't seen them do this in a while, the price check, but people remember that
We
as
still have it.
driving,
Mm-hmm.
okay, as driving comparison. And what that did for them is create trust and transparency because they admit we might not be the lowest. So, but it's a help. It's a real benefit to the person looking for insurance. And I think Liberty's position of don't pay more for what you really need, or what you need is just promoting value, right? And expertise. Because what it's saying is it's creating doubt that the others are really acting in your best interest or have the
Mm-hmm.
expertise to help guide you. So I think it's kind of has an expertise feel. And the bottom line is they're all based around some sort of price nuance, but they're distinctly different in those respects. So the entire category being commoditized, what do? You create a mascot, you create a personification because it's really hard for people to sort out how you're different. I'm coming to the point of view that to differentiate in today's highly or hyper competitive markets, and this is insurance is definitely one of them, is harder and harder and almost in some cases near impossible. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to have a gimmick, and the gimmick in insurance is find a flow, find cave. Geico has many of them, but they have the gecko. Um,
Yep.
find the emu, which makes no sense to me at all, but that's but there is association and familiarity with that. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you go to their websites, and I just checked this out this week, they all start with that very thing. So if you go to Geico,
Mhm.
it says, quickly go through this, and you fill out your information, boom, it's supposed to return something. Progressive has the price checker, and Liberty, theirs is a questionnaire that starts to say, what do you really need? And
Yeah.
so they're living
Yeah.
that promise at least.
Right.
And two of the three, Geico shows the gecko, Liberty shows Doug, actually. And I think that might toggle through. Progressive doesn't show anything. And I think part of that is they have Flow and Friends, but they're also doing the when you become a parent, or,
You're your parent.
yeah,
Don't become your parents, kind of thing. Right.
yeah, don't become your
Right.
parents. That's what
Parents.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So, that's a
Should
little
we?
harder because,
Yeah. Should we park closer to the stadium? Right.
yeah,
Don't become your parents.
I like the elevator one. Why are you standing backwards?
Yeah. 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 And the guy in the grocery store, which says the guy in meat, he's doing great, or whatever that is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're very
And
good.
they're doing one now with social. The guy says just because there's fruit emojis doesn't mean they're talking about fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, this touches on our 5 ways to differentiate a commodity. The first one being identify with a symbol. And you can think of like the Prudential Rock or Pacific
Hmm.
Life Blue Whale if you want within insurance and
Hmm.
investments. Number two, personify with a character. So that's what we were
Right.
just talking about.
Right.
Number three, create a new generic. Number four, change the name. And number five, reposition the category.
Right.
So create a generic, that's like, that isn't used very often.
Hmm.
But when you think about it, each of these five options involves a major decision. A symbol could easily tank, as could a character, especially if it's not executed right. I like to use the Aflac duck as the example. Imagine seeing that on a billboard before we ever saw it on TV. You wouldn't know the shenanigans of the duck. You wouldn't know its personality. You wouldn't know the auditory connection of Aflac as the sound, the duck makes. So there's a lot of clients that come and say, "Oh, I need a character." Well, the question there is, are you going to invest the amount of money necessary to develop that mascot so that people pay attention to it?
Right.
So that's, I think, really a warning for those that might pick number one, identify with a symbol, or number two, personify with a character. But maybe walk us through changing the name, which is the
Hmm.
fourth item, and number five, repositioning the category.
And I'm glad you didn't ask me about how to create a generic because I really don't know what that is. So I'd have to do that in another podcast.
Well, I think
uh,
I think that
mm,
goes to when you look at Walmart, for
yeah.
instance, they have great value, right? So they
Hmm.
created a generic, and you can go to paper products, you can go to cleaning products, you can go to even some food stuff, and they have the great value brand. So it's
Okay.
almost the generic of the low price guy. And I think maybe that's when we're talking about it, that's a new generic that is owned by Walmart.
Okay. Well, that's better than I would do on that one. But but change the name is always a really good way to go. I think
Mhm,
listeners and viewers just very quickly will do not know, for example, that Orville Redenbacher gourmet popcorn was first named Redbow.
mhm.
Nike was first named when it first marketed Blue Ribbon. So I think anyone just hearing the names, and I don't think it's just because they've been advertised. I think that Orville Redenbacher is just naturally engaging, and of course, it had a personification with it too, that helped. And Nike being a Greek goddess, is it a goddess or god, um, is just much more powerful and kind of tickles the imagination a little bit more than Blue Ribbon, which sounds like butter. So renaming can be a good way. Another way is to reposition the category. And you said that, like, again, going back to Redenbacher, just because it's on my mind, there's so many examples. But there was, before they came to the market, renamed, rebranded, there wasn't gourmet popcorn. So they were the first to
Mhm,
say, this is gourmet. It's kind of like Rayos with super premium, right? It's a gourmet sauce. So, and then
mhm,
we did this for insulated vinyl siding or insulated siding, new category. And we as consumers are aware of like performance engines, performance fabrics, high performance anything, composite decking. These are all new categories. And how you know it's a new category is when you can say composite decking versus ordinary wood decking. And
mhm,
often what's a real tell to a category reposition is that you can characterize the old as ordinary, whatever it is.
mhm,
And so that works really well. And you think about M&Ms, right? M&Ms was the first chocolate that didn't melt in your hands, right? So melts in your mouth, not in your hands. Well, that repositioned chocolate bars and
mhm.
lead-free gas, repositioned regular gasoline. Intel inside made it seem like if you didn't have that inside, if you didn't have a computer with Intel inside, that was one category. Then you had something deficient or inferior.
Good. Well, low price, just to sum up, is
Mhm.
not just slapping a price on something, but it literally is a structural change to the organization, or it's going to be very unlikely you're going to be able to sustain the lowest price over a period of time. As we saw with air travel, we had a lot of new entrants that could come in, and it cost them a lot less money to enter the market. So of course their prices were lower. And insurance here, we're seeing a very crowded, commoditized market. And there's, if not three, there's probably 10 they're going after low price, depending on how you look at their marketing and stuff. But I think that's a good discussion for today. I think it's time for you to go figure out and find your thing one costume. You have just 4 weeks.
Just 4 weeks. Yeah, let's put the pressure on.
Just 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lorraine, and thanks to our audience for viewing and listening. Please like, share, comment, tell your best friends, subscribe, go shout it from the mountaintops. Then join us for our next episode of Brand Shorthand as we discuss the core concepts of positioning. Until then, have an amazing day.
Business but my own.